Welcome. Today, we are peeling back the layers of British history, digging way past the stories you think you know. We're going to uncover the true foundations of the island's identity, and trust me, our starting point is probably not what you're expecting.
All right, let's just dive right in with a question to get you thinking. When you picture the British monarchy, you're probably imagining something ancient, right? Something quintessentially English. But here's a curveball for you. What if I told you the modern royal family has roots that are actually very recent and very, very German?
Just take a look at this timeline. The men who founded the family lines we know today, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha and Prince Louis of Battenberg, they only arrived in Britain in the mid-1800s. We're not talking about the Dark Ages here. This is just a handful of generations ago. And pay close attention to those dates later on. They're absolutely key. Right, so here's the deal. During World War I, having a German-sounding name in Britain was, well, not a good look. So in 1917, the royal family made a very strategic PR move. The names Saxe-Coburg and Gotha vanished and was replaced by Windsor. The Battenbergs did the exact same thing, becoming the Mountbattens. This wasn't some slow, organic change. It was a deliberate rebranding born out of political pressure.
Now, this is where it gets really fun. That name, Saxon, creates this amazing historical coincidence. It seems to connect the modern royals all the way back to the very founders of England. But as we're about to see, it's just a 1400-year-old case of mistaken identity.
So let's break this down because it's super important not to mix these two up. On one hand, you have the Anglo-Saxons. They were whole tribes of Germanic people who migrated in the 5th century and completely changed the culture and language of the island. On the other hand, you have a single German royal family from a place called Saxony who showed up in the 1800s. The name is a coincidence, that's it.
And that, of course, begs a huge question. If the Anglo-Saxons were migrants themselves, who was living in Britain before they got there? To find the island's true bedrock, its indigenous population, we have to rewind the clock even further.
And here they are, the Celtic Britons. These were the original inhabitants. They were there for centuries before the Romans even showed up. They spoke a language called Brythonic, and crucially, their culture and language were pushed to the west, where their legacy is incredibly strong today, among the Welsh, the Cornish, and even the Bretons in France. You know, the Welsh name for themselves, Cymry, literally means fellow countrymen. Think about that. It's such a powerful symbol of their enduring identity. And this quote just nails it, really. Modern historians now understand that British history wasn't a series of conquests where one group completely replaced another. No way! It was a messy, fascinating, and continuous process of mixing, of blending, of cultures layering on top of one another. So a much better way to think about British history isn't a family tree, but more like, well, a rock formation. It's a nation built up of distinct layers, one after another, and each one adds something new to the whole. Let's walk through these layers. At the very bottom, the foundation, you have the indigenous Celtic Britons. On top of that, the Romans arrived. They weren't settlers, really. They were administrators. They built roads, brought order, but they didn't replace the people. Then came the Anglo-Saxons, a huge cultural and linguistic shift. Then you get the Vikings, adding a Scandinavian flavor, especially up north. And finally, you have the Norman Conquest, which slapped a French-speaking ruling class right on top of the whole thing. And here's the kicker. Modern genetics backs all of this up. The DNA of the average English person today isn't purely Anglo-Saxon, not even close. It is a complex tapestry, and a huge chunk of that genetic code, that bedrock, comes from those original Celtic Britons. The genes tell the true story.
Okay, so you might be thinking, if this Brythonic language was mostly replaced by Old English, how on earth do we even know it existed? Where's the proof?
Well, the answer is quite literally written all over the map. The landscape of Britain itself is like a fossil record of this ancient language. It's hiding in plain sight in the names of rivers, towns, and hills. Get this. These are linguistic ghosts. Dover comes from the Brythonic word for the waters. The river Avon? Well, Abonea was their word for river, so its name today literally means river. It's amazing. Even major places like London and Kent still carry echoes of their ancient names. These aren't just random words. They're proof of a language that was spoken across the whole island 2,000 years ago.
So no, you can't just go to a library and check out a book written in Brythonic. Instead, scholars have to be like linguistic detectives. They piece it together from little bits of evidence. Inscriptions, descendant languages like Welsh, and this incredible treasure map of place names, carefully excavating the lost language of the ancient Britons.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. the modern royal family, with its German Windsor line and Prince Philip's Greek and Danish heritage. They aren't some exception to this story. They are the perfect modern example of it. They represent just another layer in this long, complicated, and fascinating history of European migration shaping what we call British.
So we're left with this final thought. Britain's story is one of constant movement, of mixing and of layering, all the way from the Celtic Britons to the House of Windsor. When you really understand this deep history, it forces you to ask a pretty profound question. If basically every native group was once a group of migrants, what does a nation's identity really mean today? It's definitely something to think about.